I am here today to talk to you to something that is actually really exciting to me. It's just WordPress, domains, LMS all together. Okay. And before I get started into that, I will just mention that if any of the online folks that are watching, if you want to ask any questions, I have some moles about to answer those questions. All you have to do is use the conference hashtag and then my Twitter account right there. So you can do that if you so desire. So let's jump into things. So the story starts, gotta do it over here. The story starts 28 months ago. So 28 months ago, been a really long time now, was the time at which our university informed me that we were swapping from D2l to Canvas. Okay, so that's kind of what kick-started a lot of this. Now, at the time though, when that transition came up, one of the things I was thinking about is, well, what are the best use cases of D2l that I've seen on campus? What are the instructors that I've seen? What are they doing to really take advantage of D2l and what it has to offer for the classroom? So with that question in mind, I came to one of my colleagues. His name is Adam Kroom, who coincidentally now is now my boss as of today. So hey, that's exciting. That was not planned. But anyways, now he was using WordPress in a really interesting way. He was using WordPress basically as his front end for all of his content for his course. And that he was plugging in directly into D2l. So when students would load up their D2l pages, they would see the menu for D2l, and then under it would be a WordPress website, is basically what would happen. So the content was all available and delivered through this WordPress website. But all of the quizzes, all of the student data, all of those pieces were still housed within the D2l system, so they weren't ever in WordPress at all, excluding student blogs, but we'll get to that later. That's an upcoming story. So this was my favorite kind of like use case that I'd seen at the time, 28 months ago. And when I looked into replicating that, or what else is possible on Canvas, little did I know how large the floodgates were. Because as I started to experiment, this is my first experiment. So as I started to experiment, one kind of use case that I was thinking about is what might a classroom that has integrated blogs directly into the LMS look like? Okay. So these were the two things that I put together. You can take the Pro off. I was using the free version for this, but the Pro is available if you are so inclined. But using WordPress and a anonymous posting plugin, I was able to use the LMS as a front end for blogging, essentially. Okay, so that's fine and dandy, but what did that look like? So it looked like this. So this is the front end. That is a WordPress website with the plugin that I just mentioned, Access Press, directly there. Now what you're looking at, just as a side note, I do a lot of faculty development, and this was a faculty development project where I was engaging instructors in like online writing and blogging. So that was the goal of this Canvas course. But really, because we were transitioning to Canvas, it was kind of a misdirect because I was trying to get people in to actually learn how to use Canvas and not necessarily, I mean, the focus, yes, was writing, but somewhat of a misdirect in that regard. Now, this was so this plugin here allowed us to do this. Okay, so we had a blog stream that could run during the course. Okay. Now, Any questions so far about any of that? Okay. Sounds good. Then we will move forward then. So, how was it that this was accomplished? Well, the first tool I needed was the lovely encrypted website. Okay, so one of the hurdles to overcome with Canvas is it doesn't display anything outside of its system that is not encrypted. So whatever content you're bringing in has to be HTTPS. It has to be secure. Okay, so that was the first kind of hurdle in this journey. Now, HTTPS 28 months ago, even a little bit longer ago, was not, I wouldn't say it's quite accessible to our faculty until we came to the time where this was readily available for our faculty. Okay, so our school is a domain of one's own school. So we have a domain of one's own project with about 5,000 users or so now within our system. And because those users who were making WordPress accounts in our system had access to a cPanel and could do things on their own, they had access to Let's Encrypt, which granted them HTTPS on any of the sites that they needed. Any site that they wanted to bring into Canvas that they were in control of, they could bring into Canvas. Okay. I think one of the things that kind of blew me away as I was working on this is it moved into a period, I guess, where you don't have to absolutely know coding to pull something like this off. I think that was what was very powerful for me at the time, because yes, you do have to know to navigate the cPanel, and that in and of itself takes some learning, and I understand that. But without coding, you could actually do this. An instructor could just take one of their sites and get it ready and bring it into Canvas, like so. Now, let me show you the other side of this story, though, because we need to talk about Canvas a little bit after we talk about how our Let's Encrypt works, actually. So, this is our domain of one's own, and we are, this is access to the cPanel there, and there is Let's Encrypt right there. The tool, probably maybe my favorite tool in the cPanel right now for this reason. Okay, so that is everything you need to know about that for now. Now to Canvas. So Canvas, I needed something else. I needed something on the receiving end of Canvas to get it to recognize some of these websites or any of these web tools that we're kind of playing with and experimenting with. Canvas is on the left. The tool, my favorite Canvas app, is called the redirect tool. That's what it's called. Okay, it is fantastic. And if you don't have access to it in your own Canvas, you can actually configure it without any admin intervention at all. So we can talk about that. If you need assistance, you can just configure that. But all of our faculty actually have access to all of the Canvas apps, much like they have access to cPanel and all of those things in the domain of one's own instance. But let me show you the redirect tool real quick, because the redirect tool is built into the Canvas apps system. So in a Canvas course, if you navigate to the settings, so we're looking at the settings, and you toggle over to the apps section, and then I typed in redirect here so I could just look at redirect for this lovely slide picture. There's the redirect tool, and when you click on it to configure it, you have some settings here that you can use. So these are the settings that I typically use for all of my integrations. So whatever the menu item name is that you want on the left bar there, in a Canvas course, so any of the ones that we will look at or have access to look at in a second. And then the URL, the direct URL to the site, and then you want to show the site in the course navigation. So those are the configuration options that I use. Don't worry, you don't have to like write all of this down because I have a guide to do all of this if you would like some more instructions on that. And what that resulted in, so after you do that, you have this situation where you have a Canvas course. This Canvas course here, well, it's kind of a mock-up, so it's a mock-up, but this is a Canvas course where a faculty in our social work department wanted to do a feed WordPress style blog where all of their students could write about the experiences they had in some of their projects and throughout the course and as they were going into the field and doing all of those things. What she wanted to do though is she wanted to bring in all of that writing into the site directly to encourage the rest of the students to read and engage with that work. Okay, so rather than it being an exterior website that folks have to go to, they may not even know the URL for, taking away some of those barriers to have just the website, the tool directly in Canvas itself. Okay, so that's kind of the end result, and that is one example, feed WordPress site, in this case from an instructor in the social work department. Any questions about any of that? Yeah.
So right now, so that's the links. You put the links in the Canvas menu to get to the WordPress site.
Yep.
And then are students authenticated and logging in and posting within the WordPress site, or are they just curious?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So the question was, for the folks online too, the question was, is there any authentication at play within the system? And actually, so that is one of the shortcomings of this. Authentication doesn't play nice with the site itself. But for this example in particular, students had their own blogs that were external to this. So they didn't necessarily have to authenticate for this one because it wasn't like a shared blog. So they didn't have accounts in this account or in this instance of WordPress. But yeah, I'll talk about some of the core key things and stuff as we go to. But that's a great question. And one of the things I was kind of bummed about, having learned it as well. Any other questions? All right, and we will continue. So, here we go. What's next? I think the thing that I kind of want to bring up to you all, specifically to the WordPress campus, is what's possible, okay? Because you all are the designers, the maintainers, the developers, all of this, the instructors in many cases, the admins. What's possible with a technology like this? That's kind of what I bring forth to you. That's my big question. And I think the thing for me that kind of that hits home about what's possible are, there's tons and tons of tools out there, right? These are just a few plugins, for instance. So there's tons of plugins in WordPress that are now essentially available in a LMS, that are now available in a Canvas course, as long as you don't have to authenticate, of course. So things that don't need to be signed into. But yeah, so you now have, in one swoop, increased the number of features in your LMS, okay? And for us, for the University of Oklahoma, that's easier and more accessible because all of our faculty and students have access to free domains, okay? There's lots to play with. And over 28 months, it keeps expanding. And I think that's one of the things that, as I kind of present on this topic, we will dive into shortly. Man, killing it. First spiel in 15 minutes. Okay. One last time for questions, because we're about to have some fun. If you're not already like ecstatic, but yeah.
We used, at Pitt, we're still on Blackboard, looking along with that, which has a built-in log tool, which is horrible. And I can see it used for something like this, where you're integrating with WordPress outside of the environment. So for Canvas, does it have a log tool built into it that the faculty member chose not to use and wanted to integrate WordPress into it?
That's a good question.
I'm unsure of the collaboration tools available on Canvas.
So by name, I don't think so. By jerry-rigging something, possibly, but not. Yeah, oh, and the question was, excuse me, to get good at this. Question was, for those online, is there an integrated blog tool for Canvas? And off the top of my head, I don't believe so. At least not like a named one. So yeah.
It's probably not, even if there is one named, it's probably like in D2l or the others where it's not really a blog, it's just a reformatted discussion forum, and it doesn't live past the end of the semester either. It dies with the show.
Yeah, so that was a great comment too, right? Is even if it was built in, then it's not something that exists outside of the LMS, so it lives and dies with the LMS.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Is it possible to make the redirected WordPress blog available outside of Canvas?
Yeah, so the question was, can the redirected WordPress blog be accessible outside of Canvas? So by default, it actually is.
Right, but I mean.
So one of the things, so for instance, with the faculty member in the social work group, that was one thing that was kind of important to her, was she wanted to be able to show both to her department, but then just generally in the world of social work, what her students were doing. And these sites are not necessarily upfront indexed by Google, and they're basically invisible to certain degrees, unless you know how to search within Canvas and whatnot. But effectively for her, she got to decide whether she wanted to share the URL and make it a public thing or not, is what it came down to. So
I
yeah.
guess I'm thinking within Canvas would be, is it possible to do that with Canvas? Or is it simply the WordPress?
Okay, so is it possible for the Canvas environment to be open as well?
Maybe I'm not phrasing it correctly. Is the WordPress site, let's say she limits it to not be a public site, then it would be only available in the Canvas course, correct?
So
Are there other options for making it more available to other people, I guess is what I'm saying.
yeah, so whatever option she would use in the WordPress instance would be the same both outside of Canvas and inside of Canvas, is how it would work. So whatever settings she instituted for a public-facing WordPress site would be the same that would be in Canvas itself. So one of the instances where we've had faculty wanting to limit who has access is having passwords on these sites themselves that only their students have access to, is one of the ways that faculty have chosen to do this.
The reason I'm asking is in Moodle, there's a blogging tool that is available to the whole Moodle community within our Moodle instance.
Yeah. Okay, I see.
So would this course blog be available to other people at Oklahoma University?
Yeah, okay, I see.
Who
So,
are in the course, thank you.
yeah, so getting really to the meat of the question, is this Canvas course and and subsequently the WordPress blog available to other users across campus through a sharing system within Canvas or within the university or any of those things?
Right.
Technically speaking, it could be if the course is in, so Canvas can share, you can post your courses to a public repository that is just your university, so only folks at your university can see those courses there. I would say though that they're probably like this many, probably like 12 or 10, because you gotta count fingers correctly. Because folks don't know about that feature and don't really use it in Canvas, I would say, at least faculty on our campus. I know a couple that do, but not to the degree that I would say that it would be they wouldn't even know that it was an issue to bring up, let's say that, yeah. And by default, it's off, so it doesn't share out.
The faculty member could share the URL where the other faculty member could use the redirect tool to publish it as an example or something, perhaps, if they wanted to share it with another instructor, say, here's an example of a blog that a student's been using, and they could create a link on the menu using the redirect tool.
Yeah, so the question was, can faculty share these resources with other faculty? And the answer is yes, because the WordPress URL you can directly, and then there are also permissions for the Canvas course itself. The Canvas course we're gonna jump into in a little bit is actually public facing. So anyone with that URL can jump into that Canvas course and access any of that content as well. So there's varying degrees of that openness, depending on what faculty want to do. Yeah.
I have a question about just your management of course materials. Do you have a policy about how long you maintain Canvas courses and or WordPress sites, and is that correlated together?
That's a very good question. So is there a policy on maintenance of Canvas courses and WordPress courses and all of those things? So right now, so our IT handles the Canvas side of things. And so far, I would say that there's no instituted policy. And the reason I say that is because they haven't done anything about these several thousand courses we've been accumulating so far. They haven't done anything about it. And in fact, when we transitioned originally, they brought over the previous 2 years worth of courses into Canvas itself. So there's those that are still there. And I know they're there because I have some in my account still from sharing and looking at them. So I don't know that there's a plan in place yet. I know there will have to be at some point because that is server space somewhere. But yeah, so that's for Canvas. For WordPress, for our domains, right now, since we're with the domain of one's own, our department, which is now so myself being in the Office of Digital Learning, handles that software for Campus. And between the folks in our office that work with it and the folks at the hosting company, those are the two entities that kind of work with that maintenance. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, but you haven't instituted a policy yet that a course site that's created on domain of one's own is in existence for 5 years or something like that. Right now, they're just infinitely
Correct.
available.
So there is no policy on when sites are decommissioned, partially because it's up to the professors. They get to decide when they want to decommission their course site. So if they do nothing, then it can stay up if they want it to, or if they don't want it to. So.
And then one more follow-up.
Yep.
So we also have professors using WordPress for course sites, and we try to steer them towards doing class sites where all students are participating on one course site. But we do have professors who want every single student to have their own WordPress site for a given course. Do you
Yeah.
have that happen at all, or do you have it?
Yes.
Oh, you do. Okay.
So the question was, do we have instances where all students have WordPress in a course versus not, versus like one WordPress or group WordPress or any of those? Yes, we have one of our very popular models, and actually the model that the social work one was based off of. It exists where a WordPress is generated by the faculty member, and on that WordPress is the plugin Feed WordPress, and then all of the students go through a registration into the domain of one's own service too, and they set up their own domains and WordPresses, and then all of those are then fed into the faculty members that then exists in Canvas, if they so choose. But the faculty get all of those choices in terms of that's what they want to do. We have other faculty that choose to, and they don't always like integrate them into Canvas or not too. Like they have choices of whether it goes in Canvas or whether it stays outside. But there are other faculty who do group blogs. So one site that they make and they get all of their students registered into, we also have. Which with the authentication issue, probably wouldn't be so good for this setup. So it's better for everyone, every student to have blogs, and they feed into a master blog that is only maintained by the faculty member.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's it. Cool. Great questions, great conversation and discussion. Any other questions?
Do you have familiarity with the other, besides Canvas, some of the other LMS platforms, do they have the same ability to do some of this integration?
Yeah, so the question is, do other LMSs have access to this same ability to integrate websites into them? Canvas and D2l do, I know. I'm not sure about Blackboard, but Moodle would be one that so I'm not 100% sure, but if I had to guess, I would lean closer to yes than no for Moodle. But I don't know about Blackboard at all because I've actually never touched that one in terms of usage. But yeah.
Sakai?
Oh, I don't know. I can't say anything because no fake news in here. Okay, I'm not saying it. So yeah, I'm not sure. So you'd have to look if there's a way that a site, probably that's HTTPS, can be integrated into whichever LMS you use. If that can be done, all of this can be done that we're talking about. So that's the focus. If you can find one way for a website that's encrypted to get in and display, then you're good to go. That's the goal. That's the homework. Any other questions? Yeah.
I would just add on top of that, because I've tried that with D2l. The trade-off you get into is if they're doing it, you have the students do it in the class, and all you're really caring about is that they interact with it through the LMS. And again, it's going to die after the end of the semester. You don't care about that. That's fine, embedding it in at least in D2l in the LMS. The problem is if you're dealing with a site where students may actually, they want to have access to it after the semester. They may want to actually also be able to access the WordPress site without going through the LMS. The problem you'll get in is the D2l hides the external real URL. It rewrites the URL and frames it. And so, they end up not knowing that this is actually, a real world site of, that they can go get to.
Yeah.
Type thing. So, it depends what you want to do.
Yeah. So the comment was made that one of the things to consider when you're thinking about any of this that you're doing is whether you want your students to have long-term access to content or not, because there are some hurdles if you integrate these sites directly into your LMS without telling your students at all that they're actual sites, they effectively will lose them because that's what they think has happened. All right, anything else? Comments, questions?
So when the students are posting they're doing it inside of Canvas.
Yep.
So they never see the WordPress site. So,
Okay, so that's a good, interesting question. So do the students ever see a WordPress site if they just post in Canvas? In that instance, no. So you can set up systems where you have a Canvas course that operates completely independent of anyone knowing that it's a Canvas at all, and is basically a blog for Canvas, essentially. But that's just one setup. It depends on what the faculty members want to do, and we kind of have all the use cases, I would say, at that point.
so there are a number of different models.
Yeah, number of different models. Yeah, I think that's the best way to say it. Any other thoughts or questions? All right, then we gotta have some fun, at least before we leave. So the site that you're looking at actually is a public-facing Canvas course. And if you go to that URL right there, you can get into this environment that I've been looking at the whole time, and you can play with all of those things on the side. Okay, in 28 months, I've collected a fair few. Please note that all of the integrations you're going to see in here are not WordPress, okay? Some of them are HTML sites, some of them are, like there's a wiki in there. There's games that are playable within Canvas. The one that I was super excited about is I think it's the RPG Maker. So that's a game from the University of Colorado has a game design course where their syllabus is a game. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that would work in Canvas. And it totally does. So that one's really cool. But yeah, there's tons of different things in here. I do want to direct your attention, since we are mostly talking about WordPress though. The student blogs are like kind of 3 different setups down in the bottom left-hand corner of the Canvas course once you get in there. The challenge bank, the daily headline under it, the storytelling collector, those are all WordPress things, and some of those are actually from the DS106, for those that are familiar with that. Some of that is inspired and comes out of that project. You can actually visit the DS106 if you want to within Canvas, but I will say, being on an older version of Canvas, it doesn't quite frame right. So at your own leisure, you can see that. But some of these, like Gravity Forms, is just specifically for that plugin and to see what that looks like and how it operates. But yeah, there's tons and tons of these. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring this to this conference in particular is because this is my imagination over, a couple of years, but collectively, you all have way more that you can do. I guarantee it, in terms of plugins and WordPress setups, and all of those things. So that's why I am bringing it forward. One of the things that I was going to also kind of prompt you for as we are at this stage too, is if you're an instructor and as you're exploring these, think about what pedagogies are possible with this kind of integration. Like how would you change something that you do in your course? I mean, to some people, it's just an ease of use. Maybe having just the contents within Canvas is like in and of itself the thing that they're after. But what things change with an integration like this? How can teaching change with an integration like this? And similarly for designers, admins, all of you wonderful folk, how do we best support instructors with technology like this? Because this technology, as you can see, you can kind of have a field day with. This has kind of been a field day. What are ways that you could support folks in their journey, in this journey? Yeah, what can you do? So those are a couple of prompts as you are exploring those, but don't stop exploring those. You're welcome to keep going. They are quite fun. I will say too, some of them are awesome, like the FET simulation is cool because they are the HTML, we're almost done, so we're just gonna go to it. The FET simulation is awesome because it's a HTML5 tool that works on like tablets and all the things where you can do experiments and, okay, sorry, I love it. I have too much fun. The web coding one's pretty cool where you can do live web coding, lots of things. So there's tons of things even external to WordPress using this integration. Yes, question?
Are all these tools, are you using the redirect tool to pull this into?
Yes, all of these tools are pulled via the redirect tool. The one thing I will say special though, is some of them I'm pulling their embed code URL rather than their direct URL, because then like with this one, in fact, I'm pretty sure this one is that situation. So like with some of them, you get all the gobbledygook of the website, and sometimes I just want the tool itself to be embedded. So this one is, in fact, one. And if I replace my name up here, boom. Love it. Oh, so good, so good. So anyways, yeah, I think then so we are closing in on time and we're about at the end. Oh, my presentation is in here too if you want to revisit any of that. What do we have? Oh, the last pages were just question marks and stuff. I will say when you did land on the home page of this Canvas course, there were a couple of things that I kind of talked about. The resources though, the WordPress-LMS integration guide is my write-up on how to do this. So if you feel so inclined and you want to take things and integrate them into Canvas, it goes through the processes and everything I talked about. Well, not everything I talked about, but lots of things I talked about today you can do. So, okay, I got excited because we got to the fun part. That's the really fun part. Any other questions? Any like final things, concerns?
We were working with professors, drawing resources into Canvas. Do you ever reach a point with them where they're saying, well, I really need Canvas? Or, I really need the Canvas framework.
Okay, so that's a really good question. I think that's the perfect one towards the end too. The question is with all these tools, do faculty ever ask if they really need Canvas, like after all of these integrations and different things? I would say to some degree it depends on the faculty. One thing I think that's really important to remember, and I think that one of the things that's most powerful about this is at the end of the day, the LMS is storing all of the quizzes and student data and all of those pieces still. So students can still interact with your course like they would interact with everyone else's course on campus to a certain degree. So there is some benefit in that regard. But at the same time, I mean, it's up to the faculty members of what they want to do. We do have faculty members, as I'm sure everyone does, who don't use the LMS at all. So yeah, it kind of depends. Maybe there's a slice of those that are doing stuff like this on their own websites. But yeah, it's a very good question to get us towards the end. We have 5 minutes left. Does anybody want to ask anything else, or we can close early and then folks can come down and ask questions or anything like that? Any burning questions you have to have answered?
I imagine
Okay.
taking to most of the sites that you're linking to do not have a setup so that you can hook into it and feed into the Canvas gradebook, for example.
Yeah.
But do
Yeah.
you see those coming online? or-
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So do the sites that are integrated into Canvas push data into like the gradebook and stuff? I haven't seen one example yet, but I know that it's possible, especially with the Canvas APIs, that some of that stuff can be done. I don't know. I'm not wholly aware of what degree, like all of that, like where how much it's worth it and how much it's not comes into play. But I think it's actually a really interesting question to explore because like some of these, if you could push data from them, like even the H5P, for example, that was one of the plugins I listed. If you could pull data from that, which has some very interactive pieces of content, and then push it directly into Canvas, then yeah.
I haven't tried it, so disclaimer, I haven't tried it, haven't done it. In theory, H5P has the, what's the connector? Yeah, it's
LTI?
LTI, has an LTI connection for that to do that through API, and I know they're pushing on it more of that, but I don't know.
So the comment was
Furthering the mileage will vary.
that it sounds like H5P may have some extra pushes in for some LTI integrations and those kinds of things. Cool. Well, I want to say, I'm going to call it there because I want to say thank you so much for joining me for this. I really enjoyed this topic a lot. And thanks for bearing with my kind of change up in presentation. I'm actually, the sit here and talk the whole time is not as comfortable to me as like conversation, I would say. So thanks for bearing with me there. And thank you most of all to the online folks who had to bear with me to sit in silence for a second to translate questions and whatnot. But overall, yeah, thanks. And come chat with me if you want some more information.